I am a 35 years old female, been with my fiancé for 3 years. We both work and we both share rent and other expenses. But my fiancé is currently looking for a new job. He lost his old job 3 months ago. My family lives 30 minutes away, and although it's been difficult this year, I decided to get my brother, who has a chronic condition and struggled a lot lately and was in the hospital for a few days for anemia. The one thing he's been wanting for some time. I got him an Xbox that cost me $300. He was so happy, and I'm glad I was able to cheer him up during those times. My fiancé received a few gifts from his family, but he wasn't happy with any of them. I got him a perfume and he liked it. We were visiting my family and we had dinner with them. My fiancé looked at the Xbox I got for my brother and didn't stop talking about it. My parents noticed. I told him to stop complaining about what he got / didn't get this year. That made them uncomfortable, especially since they've been dealing with my brother's health issues and needed to relax. We got home and my fiancé took something from the closet and left for about an hour. I was asleep when he came back. In the morning, I was surprised to find my brother's Xbox in the closet. I woke him and asked him about it. Turned out he dropped me off, drove back to my family's house, and exchanged the gift his aunt gave him, a $14 fancy pen, with my brother's Xbox. He said that my brother was happy to exchange gifts. I was so mad. I told him this wasn't for him, and he basically took something that is not his. Not to mention a pen for an Xbox. That's ridiculous. He told me that maybe I shouldn't have spent $300 while trying to pay for rent. I told him as long as I can pay rent, that's not a problem, and that he needs to find a job if he thinks my money isn't enough. I called my mom and I found out that they didn't actually exchange gifts. My fiancé pressured my brother into giving him his Xbox. I was livid and so mad. I told him to take the Xbox back to my brother, but he said it was between him and my brother, but I insisted. He refused, so I ended up taking it myself. My fiancé argued when I took it and said that I was pressuring him and treating him poorly and have no respect for his feelings. I told him he was wrong to make my brother give him his gift and causing him stress and ruining his joy. I apologized to my brother and my parents, and I felt awful because of how my fiancé behaved. My fiancé isn't talking to me, saying that I have no consideration for his feelings and not understanding how he feels, not having money to buy himself the things he likes. I'm surprised because he has never done anything like this before. I get that he's struggling with finding a job, but this is not an excuse. When I was a teenager, my dad bought me a classic 1972 Ford Bronco. It was my true passion, and I don't recall a memory from high school that somehow doesn't involve that truck. Plus, my dad and I would spend hours and hours working on it together, and we went through that especially father / son rough patch. When I was teenager, it was always that Bronco that brought us back together. I made a huge mistake and sold the truck when I turned 19, and my dad died of a heart attack 2 months later, so while not logical, I've always felt a karmic connection between the two events. We had a baby in early February. She is our first and the light of my life. My wife is doing well, but she's back at work and she's realized that she hates all the daycares we've tried and really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and plus she's still very hormonal from delivery, lack of sleep and breastfeeding, so she's having a rough time and is angry a lot. I guess I need to say this. 2 weeks ago, I was driving through our town's warehouse district and saw a Bronco that was pretty beat up but resembled mine. I stopped just for nostalgia's sake, and the owner came out and let me take a look inside. My dad and I had glued a wheat penny under the dash as sort of security measure, so I just sort of checked, and goddamned if it wasn't my Bronco. I asked him if he'd ever consider selling it. He said actually someone was on I-25 as we spoke from Colorado to buy it for $21,000. I freaked out and asked him if I could buy it right then and there for $23,000. He said if I could come up with the cash, yes. I had been procrastinating setting up a 529, so I had $12,000 in savings that my wife's parents had given us. I maxed out my credit card to Venmo, and my mom bought down a check for $4,000, and I drove away in my old car. It was like a dream come true. Like a literal dream come true. It needs a lot of work I can't afford right now, but it's mine. Like in my driveway, mine. Again. I can't even describe what a joy this is. My wife and her parents are furious with me. They feel I was deceptive, that a real man would have sacrificed anything and everything so my wife could go stay at home with his kids, and that's setting aside that they gave us the money for a college fund. My point is my daughter is only 6 months old, we have 18 years to set up a college fund of her. But this Bronco means everything to me, and if I wouldn't have acted it would have been gone forever. Now it can be that same connection between me and my kids. To me it's the literal meaning of happiness. I talked with my mom and she is basically going to buy the Bronco from me in order to refill the college fund and pay off the credit card. The $4,000 will be a gift and she's going to give me whatever I need to restore it. She's always been awesome to me and she's rather the money be spent now than wait for me and my sister's inheritance. I didn't tell my wife that my mom bailed me out and lied and said I found a buyer for the Bronco. I'll figure out how to cross that bridge when I get there, but my wife was so relieved that I had come to your senses. I don't want to disappoint her. It's going to take all my lying skills to pull this one off over the next few years. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC we don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent. Even though I told a few friends, I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. Boyfriend and I had been together for 6 years, work our day jobs together, and also run a side business together. He's my best friend, and despite managing to get past and through a lot together, he hasn't proposed. His family is starting to pressure us to get married, but he said he hasn't decided yet. He has said that he wants to get married and have a ton of kids, so what he means is, he hasn't decided if he wants to marry me. My ego is a little hurt. What else does he need to know that he hasn't already learned in almost 7 years? Is indecision the same thing as a decision in this case? We both started therapy separately very recently to work through some trauma and cope with anxiety. I don't know if I should wait to see if he'll come to kind of epiphany in therapy, or if I should leave and save the decision for him. I love him a lot, and for a long time I saw a future with him. But recently I'm starting to accept signs that he just doesn't love me as much as I love him. How do I know if he loves me or if he just doesn't want to be alone? We don't live together. We won't live together until we are married. He has stayed over for extended periods of time, so we're mostly familiar with each other's habits. We are from different cultures, but I still come from a traditional family, so we have a lot of the same values. I just consider myself to be more independent. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of an ultimatum. I don't like the idea of forcing someone to make a decision out of fear or because they're backed into a corner. My communication skills are something that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest, but it's something that he struggles with. And that's one thing he wants to work on in therapy. I'm working on not projecting my fears of insecurity onto our relationship, even when he isn't communicating properly. He picked me up and I told him that after the conversation with his family, I've been feeling really insecure in our relationship. And if he's unsure if he wants to marry me, I need to know what he's unsure about. I said if we want to have kids, I really can't wait forever. He says that he is sure he wants to marry me, and he might have had a plan to propose. But when I came over, his family completely blindsided him, and now it's awkward, like they've spoiled it. I told him maybe he needs to think about if what we have is what he wants. I just feel it shouldn't be this complicated. Maybe I'm just jaded and bitter at this point and nothing will make me happy. I do believe him. He wouldn't drag me along just for the fun of it. I love him, and our lives are so wrapped up, it's very hard to leave, even if I wanted to. I just wish I could read his mind. I wanted to talk to my therapist before I made any decisions. We both had appointments the following day, and in my session she asked me if I thought I was ready for marriage. I said of course. I've known I wanted to marry him since I asked him to move out with me. 2 years into the relationship and he turned me down. She responded by rephrasing the question. She said she isn't asking if I want to marry him, but rather, is the way I currently feel about myself. The way I handle my problems and my anxiety, and the way my boyfriend and I communicate. Is the way I feel in my relationship the way I want the rest of my life with this man to be? No way came out of my mouth way before I even processed it. Stressed was in my brain in big, bold, yellow letters. Right now I need to continue to work on my issues in therapy and learn what the best version of myself is like before I'm ready to commit to whatever future version of our lives together looks like. I've only been going for 2 months so far, and I've already seen a huge improvement in my ability to handle stress and my self-worth.